Hi everybody! Today I am making shortbread cookies and oat cakes for tomorrow evening. I'm going to start with the shortbread cookies because they cook at a lower temperature, and then I will move on to the oat cakes, which cook at a higher temperature. They also need slightly different ways of mixing, so I'm going to show you that as well. The shortbread cookie recipe that I'm going to use is my grandmother's shortbread cookie recipe. It has cornstarch and icing sugar, butter, flour, and salt. Cornstarch, icing sugar, butter, flour, and salt. Yes. And it's mixed with your hands, so I have wickedly clean hands, no rings on my fingers, and you mix it by hand to get the right feel and mixture to the dough. Okay, so into my trusty grandmother's mixing bowl, a half pound of butter, which is 1 cup.
And it's been at room temperature, right?
It's been at room temperature since yesterday, which in Quebec is only so room temperature. It's still quite hard. Oh, there's my oven telling me that it's hot.
275.
At 275. Okay, into my bowl, 2/3 of a cup of icing sugar. Oh, it's in there packed. 1. Grab a spoon because it is packed in there. 2. 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Which is a itty bitty one. And then we tuck in and mix with our hands. And I bet there's a nice cloud of cornstarch and icing sugar smoke around me.
No, actually, oh, now it's lifting, yes.
Oh, I didn't put the flour in yet.
Nope.
That would help.
Do you need help with the flour?
No.
So it's 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, eh?
Is it?
Well, it's like, except for the butter.
2, 2, 2. Well, quarter teaspoon of salt.
Yeah, okay.
That looks more like it.
Baking without flour. Hmm. So we had to improvise with curtains today.
Oh, yeah. Because it's getting that time of year where the sun is wickedly bright
And low.
and low. And it comes right in the kitchen window. So this job was my brother's and my job when we were kids. And if you do it by machine, I'm sure you could do it by machine for the most part. You need the heat from your hands to get it to really become a cohesive dough. Like, you can get it to about this point with the machine. But you really have to work at it by hand to get it to come together. I always thought it took forever to do, though, when I was a kid. Probably because you think everything takes forever to do as your kid.
It's not instant candy.
It's not instant candy, no. It's starting to come together there nicely. Now, it should resemble Play-Doh. Okay. Now, two ways of doing this. My grandmother Grant and my mom would roll these out really thin. Like a quarter of an inch. And cut them into big cookies. And decorate them with cherries. My grandmother Mackie, who was my step-grandmother, would cut them, she'd roll them out thicker, like about a half an inch, and cut them out with small decorated cookie cutters in different shapes. And then she would, when they came out of the oven and cooled, frost them with almond frosting, which I love. Almond buttercream. Yummy, yummy, yummy. I'm going to do these a bit old-fashioned today, though.
One big cookie.
Well, one big cookie, but then I'm going to cut it with a knife into petticoats, which are triangles. I'm going to do some of them in petticoats. Maybe I'll do some of them with little tiny cookie cutters as well.
So you pre-cut them?
Yeah, I pre-cut them. I should
Parchment paper to...
parchment my pan. There we go.
It's almost as if they cut the parchment paper to the size of those pans, huh?
Almost, eh? These are long petticoat tails. Can I do this?
The first one's always a challenge.
A challenge. Oh, that one broke.
Oh no. Call in the mason.
Put it back together again. You notice I'm not leaving a lot of space in between. They don't really need it. We'll do some fancy cookie cutters.
Hey, squirrel.
Squirrel.
Save the garbage from the recycling from spreading all over the floor.
Ah. Let's see if the oak leaves turn out. A little harder to get out. Some acorns, those will be easy. Trying to make room for more.
Yeah, because all that leftover cuts there. Huh?
Well, those become the grandpa cookie.
Mm-hmm.
What's the grandpa cookie, you say? It's a cookie about that size. Oh, this one's big enough I might be able to cut. Cut another couple petticoats.
I don't mind what shape they are.
Neither did my grandfather. The cookies that I'm making today are my grandfather's 2 favorite cookies. Yeah, we'll get
Making room.
making room.
Lots of room.
Yeah, one whole batch on one pan. Just the way I like to do it. Nothing's really touching. There we go.
I'm doing overhead.
Overhead.
There you go.
These will cook for 20 to 30 minutes. I'll set the timer. Low and slow.
Low and slow.
Enough time to wash my hands and start on the next batch of cookies. Hi, back again with cookies number 2. This batch is going to be cooked at a higher temperature, so when the shortcakes come out of the oven, the temperature will be jacked up again. And I'm also going to keep the batter cold, so you're not going to see me touching it with my hands. Although, hands are still pretty clean, because I just washed them. This recipe comes from my grandfather's cousins, Aggie and Cassie McDonald, who live down the street from us. The only difference I'm making is that I'm going to use butter instead of lard. I like the flavor of butter better than lard. So into the bowl goes 2 cups of oats. 3/4 of a cup of, I'm using butter.
So pretty much the whole thing except for 1/4.
Yep, I'm just taking off 1/4 of a cup. And I'm going to put it in the butter dish.
Just like that.
Just like that. And the rest goes in my bowl. Sans tin foil.
I was going to say, sans the foil.
Because I like Pierre's teeth in his head. And not trying to jump out through the top of his skull. So this part I am going to use my hands because it says rub in. And what better to rub in with than one's hands. But then I'm not going to touch it anymore. Except maybe to get it out of the bowl and onto
the rolling surface?
The rolling surface, yeah.
Speaking of rolling surface, would it be better if you use the...
Yeah, but I'm not digging it out. The big marble
right there
countertop that I don't really have space for in this kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hidden. Right.
It's hidden because there's literally no counter space big enough for it. I'm going to wash my hands.
It's too big for the counter we have. You'd have to do it on the table.
Yeah, I'd have to do it on the table.
But if you have a marble counter, it'd be...
if we had a marble counter, it would be in use all the time.
Yeah.
I would make pie crust on it.
Mm-hmm.
All of that good stuff. Okay, now we're going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar.
Sucre.
And you'll notice that I tend to measure over the bowl-ish. 2 cups of flour. These cookies are all pretty forgiving. So I'm not having to measure out exact. And the ladies that taught me how to make these cookies also use their hands as measuring cups. So measurements are just a suggestion. A tablespoon or a teaspoon of soda. Two teaspoons of cream of tartar.
That don't look like cream.
It's about the only time that this gets used, is this recipe. A teaspoon of salt. And I'm using my pastry cutter to do this. It also works nicely in a pinch as a rubber. My hands are really wickedly warm all the time, which is why I tend not to touch pastry. And this recipe is very much like pastry. Okay, now we are going to add more or less 1/3 of a cup of cold water.
That's a full cup. It's the more or less because it depends on how damp the weather is. When I make these in the summertime, I use barely 1/3. Right now it's -27, you said, and very dry. My hair is acting very Fraggle-like. Might be a little bit more maybe. So you're looking at texture-wise.
Texture-wise, it's exactly like pie crust. That's coming together nicely. So what I'm going to do now, tuck this in the fridge, wait for my first batch of cookies to come out, and then I'll roll these out and get them on the pan. So I'll see you in a few minutes. So I have my big hunk of nicely cold oatcake pastry. I'm going to flour my work surface because this will stick, unlike the shortbread cookies. Flour my pin. Now, contrary to some coffee shops in the Maritimes, oat cakes should be rolled as thinly as pie crust. The ones that you get in coffee shops in some places like Halifax are like almost an inch thick, and it's like cow patty. And as you can see, my kitchen is tiny. Oh, to someday have an island that I can roll out a big sheet of pastry on. When I was growing up, every once in a while I would tackle the oat cake, and it was always, they're not quite thin enough. I'm getting almost thin enough. And there's the oven ready for batch of cookies number 2. So I'm gonna start on this outer edge and start my cutting, and then work my way and pull the batter
To thin it out?
to thin it out a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Because working in a tiny kitchen, and I'm just using a biscuit cutter. So they should be really thin. And yeah, I'm using the same paper as before. No need to waste it. It's just butter.
This one is going to be a dog cookie. Because you don't want to be handling this dough with your hands as much as I am. And this one will be a little tough.
Doggy biscuit.
Yep. Doggy doesn't mind a little tough. And there's nothing in here that'll hurt him. That one's getting a little fat.
Show the thickness.
Thin like pie crust.
And this one goes in for?
This one will go in for 10 minutes until they're golden brown. And you do want them to be golden, unlike the shortbread cookies. The more golden they are, the better they taste. And that fat one might get 2 rounds in the oven.
It'll be a biscuit.
It'll be a biscuit. I will roll out this dough and batch off, and I'll chat with you later.
Voila.
Et voila. Ignore that one. We're looking at nice, lovely brown color around here.
Show me. You're gonna show me up here.
Yeah, I'm going to show you up. See the lovely brown color we want? These are still too thick for my grandfather's taste. But, you know, he hasn't been here since the mid-90s. And I think they taste good this way.
That one, however.
That one is definitely for the dog.
And it's like...
Oh, yeah. It'll get thrown back in the oven.
With the next batch.
Yep. So I'm going to continue on rolling, cutting, baking, rolling, cutting, baking until these are done. And we'll be on to the next recipe after that. Have a good night. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up button, and hit the bell for the next notifications.